Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Creative Gulf Network meeting, a salon, a gathering of creative folks from across the Gulf region and beyond. I'm JD Tolosik. I think I know everybody here. I think everybody knows me. But just in case, I'm the Director of Cultural Programs of the National Academy of Sciences. This is going into our third year of gathering um, in this type of venue to share ideas and to um, just to collaborate and create a sense of community between diverse thinkers in the Gulf. We have adopted the title Creative Gulf Network because we are a network and we are creative and we're interested in the futures of the Gulf. That was actually pretty good. I have to write that down. That could be our tagline. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn this over to my longtime collaborator, Brandon Ballinger, and he's going to also welcome you and introduce our provocateur for the day. Brandon.
Great. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the intro, JD. And Karla, thank you for being here. Karla's going to be our provocateur today. And Karla is the executive director of Artist Boat in Galveston, Texas. Karla's passion for the coastal environment, knowledge, skills, and commitment to science, art, and environmental education led her to form the nonprofit Artist Boat in 2003. Through Karla's creation and sustenance of 5 environmental education programs, all with the eco art hallmark and a classroom and field-based experiential learning model, Artist Boat now typically delivers such programming to 18,000 participants, K through Gray, annually. In 2007, Karla embarked on a new initiative to further its mission, a coastal heritage preserve vision of over 400-acre barrier island habitats on West Galveston Island as a platform for habitat preservation, restoration, appreciation, and education. With 1,039 acres preserved so far via 14 acquisitions, mostly accomplished through competitively based public funding sources for $27 million land value. She's now working towards the preserve's last major land purchases. Karla has convinced 3 different developers to stick through long public funding processes, eventually bringing them to appreciate the multiple and mutual benefits of land conservation and invaluable coastal natural resources. Once preserved, the lands go through a rigorous habitat restoration and maintenance process developed by Karla in collaboration with local, state, and federal advisors. Through this combined conservation education programming, Karla has maintained a targeted focus on predominantly underserved youth populations, instilling a stewardship ethic, a focus ahead of its time in conservation. Her influence has been felt through dozens of presentations at National Environmental Education and other conferences, such as the North American Association of Environmental Educations and of Environmental Education and the Texas Association of Environmental Educators. So, with having said all that, thank you again, Karla, and we'll let you jump right in.
I'm gonna edit that bio again and make it shorter. I don't know how it keeps getting bigger. Um, but I appreciate it. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, JD. It's good to see everybody. Um, I have a presentation to share, and I hope that y'all will enjoy it and have questions, and hopefully can get it all working. Okay. So just one thing I think that's really great about humans is I believe there's a conservationist in everyone, and that all of us engaged in work on the Gulf can really benefit from having that attitude and looking for that in every human. If you give them long enough to talk, they will tell you that they love something about nature, just might take them a while. So Artist Boat is was founded in 2003. Our mission is to promote awareness and preservation of coastal margins and the marine environment through the sciences and the arts. And we have 14 employees. We have about a $2.5 million budget this year without land acquisition. So we're very busy, but we do try to stay very place-based and hands-on. We have served almost 220,000 participants to date through our 7 programs. And I'm going to go over those with you and just talk briefly about them because I really want to have a conversation about eco art and the differences in who is doing it and what that can mean for stewardship. And so hopefully by the end, you'll know more about what I mean by that. But our biggest and oldest, oh, why is it not forwarding? Okay. There we go. Okay. So our biggest program is our Eco Art Workshop and Adventure program. And we do a series of workshops in the classroom that integrate art and science to teach students about the marine environment, but in particularly, we call it watershed education. What is a watershed? What is a river? What is an ocean? What is an estuary? How do the different waters mix together? What does that mean for salinity regimes and who lives where, right? The uh, female blue crabs, they love a saltier part of the bay, and the boys like a fresher water part of the bay. And most people don't know, but they travel quite far to hook up with the ladies. The ladies take their sperm packages, they swim off into the Gulf of Mexico, decide when to fertilize their eggs, release their eggs, and then the crabzoias, the little larvae, float back into the bay and grow up there. So we are teaching just, basic ecology of the estuary and the Gulf and the rivers. Then each student makes a portrait of a native species. Most students can identify over 600 logos and tell you what those companies do and less than 4 species that might occur in their backyard. So we have a huge learning deficit that is quite unfortunate because if you've read the book Naming Nature, children can identify in all cultures all over the world by the time they're 4 years old over 600 species of plants and animals. So it's in our DNA to name nature and know it. And so we can take quick advantage of that if we can get children outside. Then they go on a kayak adventure. They see the watershed. They learn how to paddle with a partner. There's lots of social emotional learning that goes on with this practice of learning to paddle with a partner, which schools really need and love. And then they learn about the watershed firsthand. They see the marsh. And then we teach them to make a plein air watercolor traditional landscape. And then, if we're lucky and have the funding, we go back into their classrooms and do a blue carbon art project. And so, in that part of the workshop, we teach them how to make conceptual art based on blue carbon or climate change or climate science. So, climate science is very abstract. And so, we wanted to find another way for them to express that. Um, and the program is very popular, and right now it's funded by the National Academy of Science, Gulf Research Program, and have added more components. So now we teach the students how to design an environmental action project, evaluate their project, deliver their project, and have a poster session on their outcomes. And they frequently integrate art in their environmental action projects that they do. We have an eco art residency program where the focus is creating public art to beautify a campus in some way. And so usually we pick a topic of science that's related to the Bay or the Gulf or the Houston region, and then the art is about that specific topic. So we've been very fortunate to partner with many schools in Houston. They have a Spark Park program where they allow the community to create a more sophisticated park on the school campus. And then they always have a gateway component to the Spark Park. So this was our gateway that we created, the two columns. But these are kind of expensive programs for schools because we're there a minimum of 2 hours a day for 14 weeks, and we're installing public art. So frequently people ask, how do we get this funded? I just know we spend a lot of time talking to principals. They see our projects elsewhere and they want them. Our largest public art project is a little bit old now, but I like to share it with people because this is our biggest program that involved adult artists. And so there are 70 concrete benches on the Galveston seawall. We have the longest sidewalk in the United States. It's a flood barrier to keep the storm surge from coming onto the island. So people were graffitiing them and vandalizing them. And so we applied for a permit to beautify them. And each bench got a specific theme that the county had to approve. And then we had to get sponsors. And then we had calls for specific topics. So like one of the topics was oysters. And so this is about oyster fisheries. One was about larval cycles. So the middle bench is about the larval cycle of the blue crab and the brown shrimp. And I love, there's a shrimp cocktail on there, right? Like your life cycle is destined for human food. And then the top one is about barrier island processes that either deposit or take away sand from the island. We're kind of obsessed with that here. But this project took actually about 10 years because we had to wait to have a sponsor, and each bench was a $3,500 cost at the time. And then we had to get it installed. And each bench was juried by a group of artists and scientists to choose which design would go on the bench. So it was very community based for sure. The other big project, this could be done by kids or adults, but we have a Beautify the Bucket program where we have all these blue trash barrels on our beaches. If you live in Florida, you have carry in, carry out, but Texans are apparently not that trustworthy, so we have trash cans everywhere, and they're very ugly. And so I approached the park board and said, hey, could we get people to adopt the barrels and paint the barrels with kind of anti-trash messages or ecology messages? And they said yes. And so every year, 100 barrels are adopted, and then we have a contest. They receive awards, and at World Ocean Day, all the new barrels are on display. And we have some barrels that are painted just by one solo artist, but schools can adopt the barrels, families can, businesses can, and there's a wide variety of skill involved in these, which is one of our premises for eco art, is that the process of the making is more important than the product's outcome. Whereas as a working visual artist, I would be worried constantly about my final product. Of course, process is important to an individual artist too. The biggest thing that I work on, which I will in full disclosure share, I do not have any formal training in land stewardship, land management. I have a marine biology degree and I have a visual arts degree. But in 2006, 1,075 acres was purchased by a developer on the island, and another 300 acres was purchased by another developer, and they both pursued plats and permits to channelize the prairie and the wetlands, which are very destructive for, anywhere, but on a coastal barrier island, you really need to keep all your sand and sediment in place on both sides of the island. It's critical so that you don't have geohazards, but more importantly, wetlands are thriving places. 90% of all fish, shrimps, and crabs harvested globally have to go into an estuary and have wetlands to complete their life cycle. And of course, they're mecca for birds and all of that. So we started to acquire land, and I'm just going to tell you that story a little bit. So this is an aerial that shows the land without a footprint on it. The red lines are just parcels, and you can see parallel bands to the Gulf of Mexico across that. So on the Gulf, the islands are pure sand. You could dig 50,000 feet and never hit a rock. So it's different than, like Manhattan. And the low places are the swales. And these swales are either sloughs or freshwater wetlands or connect to meandering things that go across the island. And it's critical for hydrology. And also, what I love to share with people is between the beach and the bay, we have as high biodiversity as from the bottom of the Puget Sound to the top of Mount Rainier. But everything is below your hip on a barrier island. And the reason is the salinity is different. On the beach, it's pure ocean. In the middle sloughs, it can be pure fresh water. It is maybe ephemeral, meaning that we have to have rain to have them. And then the salinity back in the marsh is going to be like 25 parts per thousand, but it could go all the way from one side of the island from 0 to 35 parts. And the elevation is changing. So everywhere you have an elevation change, you have a salinity change, you have a plant change, you have an animal change, you have an invertebrate change. And so you get extreme high biodiversity in a very small, narrow area. And it's extremely powerful. And when people say they want to go to islands on vacation, I think that their DNA is telling them they need to name nature and they want to feel quick changes and subtle changes and beauty. So these places are valuable for humans also. And then the other picture is showing the plat for the Marquette development, which was over 5,000 units of home and a golf course. And you can see the bright blue shape. This is what they would dredge, which they were avoiding a lot of wetlands to some degree. And they create this by digging up the prairie, which in Texas, we have coastal prairie. It's the most endangered habitat in North America. So we don't really want to dig it up either. So this property was our island's Mona Lisa. There were huge legacy attachments to birding Setigas Road, to kayaking from Setigas Road, to dove hunting. People tell me all the time how they experienced this land when they were children. So since that time, we've acquired 1,039 acres, and our next transaction is these yellow parcels. It's a $16 million transaction. We've raised 13.2 million to date and have another 3.2 million to raise by June 30th. We have to secure all our money by June 30th. We could get money later, but we have to assure the developer that we're done. Some interesting things have happened through saving the land. This is not really related to art in any way, but I can tell you that this land conservation is probably the thing that pushed my creativity more in my life than anything else because I knew the least about it. And we live in a place where there's highly speculative investment. People want big returns on their money. So many conservation finance tools just don't work here. And a lot of grantors don't want to fund buying 50 acres. They want to buy 5,000. So they're always like, this is too small. We won't do it, even though our biodiversity is higher. So, I feel like I'm out in the world with a giant comb, like if you had lice, combing for every tidbit of information that I can share to explain why this is valuable. And now that we've saved the land, we know that we have federally listed black rails. That's the little black rail in the corner. Oops, sorry. They're about the size of my fist. And remember, I talked about these elevation changes. The black rail wants to live in a 1-inch deep wetland. It doesn't like too much tide or any tide. And so they're kind of where the prairie first turns into the high marsh. They're very particular. And I love that they are so place-based that we literally know where they are, and we can't mow there anymore because we could hurt them. And then their chicks are the size of my thumb, and they look like the inside of an old vacuum cleaner bristle, those black brushes. And then the coyotes in Galveston are now known to have red wolf DNA, as well as the several parishes in Louisiana. So now we know when they took the red wolves off of the coast to start their breeding program in the 70s, they obviously missed some because these coyotes are formidable. And people are very attached to them and they call them ghost wolves, but our coyotes are very beautiful. The in-town coyotes are kind of scrappy. Um, So we have saved the land, and we have worked with Coleman Coker at Rice University to develop some features for students. So we have an outdoor kayak pavilion. These are just sketches. Like if we had a pavilion, what would it look like? And we worked with a person. You just say what you want, and she draws what you want. It was magical. And then we worked with Coleman to get our kayak pavilion, outdoor classroom, and our bird observatory. So there's an image of the bird observatory. The little sneaky black rail is out there too. So we have to be careful where we put our footprint. This is our kayak pavilion. It's right next to the Spanish Grant Canal, so we have access. And then at the bottom are just two renderings that the architecture students did for us to get started planning. But that was a great experience to work with those adult learners. And, they're so smart about visualizing and planning. And the students actually designed and built these structures in one semester with Coleman. So it was quite impressive. They were very sensitive to how our learners were going to use the place, how our staff was going to use the place, like what did we need? And then where is it situated on the land, and what is the footprint? So that was a great process for us. And then, I always remind people, like, we have 14 employees, so mostly I'm like signing expenditure requests now and timesheets and just a lot of paperwork. The land acquisition is the only thing that I don't have another person to do that's not an artist, a scientist, or some kind of administrator. But the big thing I wanted to get or discuss was how to get the grown-ups in the room. Like, I feel like Artist Boat, we have really mastered youth education. We have extensive programs in schools. I don't know about y'all, but I was told that I was going to save the world by my shark biologist father and all his buddies, and I love them dearly, and I love my mother. But we don't teach that, and we don't advocate to tell children that they're going to grow up and save the world, because we don't really have time for them to do that anymore. We're at a critical juncture of climate change, biodiversity crisis, extinction, and I would call it political violence against the environment. But so what I think about constantly now is, how do I take like all this knowledge and skills of art and science and maybe help artists and scientists learn how to do it together, right? Not everybody can be both, right? So how do we pair an artist and science together? How do we get them to think about how to teach? So my latest goal is to deepen engagement, to grow community action and capacity, and to engage adults as decision makers who vote, regulate, invest, and shape resilience. So one thing we hope to do in the future is figure out how to bring something like the Ocean Filibuster to Galveston. The Houston-Galveston region has 8 million people in it. How do we use that to launch a series where we bring an artist and scientist together and they decide what they want to co-create with adult learners, and maybe that's shown during Art Walk or some theater event, but that they would design, like, okay, we're going to teach about sea level, we're going to teach about ocean acidification. What do we want people to learn about? Because what we're finding is people don't have enough language about climate science to even understand resilience. They don't know what extreme heat is. They don't know what ocean acidification is. These are complex things. They don't know what blue carbon is. They don't even know what a carbon molecule looks like, and that we exhale carbon dioxide. So, and then we would like to have a large place-based event, not a large, place-based events on our land that are also activations with adult learners. Now, this is where the geek comes out in me. I want it to be externally evaluated so that we know what we did and we can improve our practices together with artists and scientists to promote climate literacy and environmental engagement. And then I just put this little diagram down here because people are always asking, what is environmental education? It is, in parts, you develop awareness, you share, and people develop knowledge, not opinions, not beliefs. They obtain real knowledge. They use that knowledge to critically think about a problem. How would you solve a problem? They have an ability to make a decision. They have agency over this topic. I can litter, I cannot litter. And then they take an action. I'm not going to litter. And that action is engagement and stewardship. So that's my provocation is how do we get grown-ups in the room to engage with artists and scientists to become climate literate? How about that? And I'll stop sharing.
Karla, thank you. Like always, we invite people to either raise a hand or unmute and ask a question or present a response. And of course, Brandon, if you have any framework, that'd be great. We really do appreciate you coming, Karla. Michelle.
Yeah, there's so many organizations in Houston area. You've got the Audubon, Splash. I mean, do you ever work together? I mean, you've also got purchase of all this land. I mean, Audubon just purchased the Bolivar area. You're separate entities. No working together.
No, we work together. So my experience, well, for one, when we started making eco art, nobody was integrating art and science. Now Splash designs their signs to teach about birds and where they are on the beach. The children design those signs. So I feel like we have a huge impact. But we partner with Splash, we partner with Houston Audubon. Now, we don't share money for land acquisition at all. It's a tough market out there. They purchased a small 40-acre tract that was in the kind of in the middle of their preserve. I don't know if you live in Houston or not, Michelle.
In
But
Houston,
we partner with all of those groups. We are, I would say, a deeper. We overlap art organizations, environmental organizations, land trust organizations, and then what I would call like the academic school. Working with schools is like its own unique animal for sure. So we partner with lots of organizations.
Okay. And what do you like through the Texas Master Naturalists? What groups do you think you could use to reach out to other artists? I mean, obviously this is one, but what other ones in Houston or Galveston?
Well, I don't know if any of the master naturalists are working artists.
I am.
Oh, okay. Right. So,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure what you're asking. Like they all know we exist. They can all volunteer. They can all participate. What I'm talking about with the adult learners integrating art and science, like we haven't done this program. This is my question always is how to have adult learners learn from professionals who can come up with some activation to learn about climate literacy.
So the Houston Arboretum offers classes like that. So partnering with them could possibly tap into that audience.
Okay, I'll look at it.
Karla, I'm wondering also, I think your point is really well taken about sort of a common language of climate science or really understanding sort of our general connection and relationship. I find this to be real even in some of our conversations just about art and art's relationship to health. It's like I think there's a significant number of individuals that beyond recognizing the importance of like trash and and stories that we've heard about garbage and things of that nature that are polluting our oceans. I think the emergence or the partnership between creatives like theater and like music, creating an opportunity for the general public to more broadly understand what our relationship to the waters are, what our relationship to the Gulf is, and how can we be involved? How can we think in a different way? Most of the time, I think if we get too deep into the science, people at some point they just shut down because they get a little bit lost. So they're unsure of what are some of the things that I can personally do And I think it's important for us to drive home more clearly that each of us can be responsible, and we are, connected to the waters, connected to the Gulf, whether we in our minds know that on a daily basis. So I really think, a deeper dive into understanding how important the Gulf is to us, and what are some practical ways that we can understand more and participate. Because I think oftentimes people feel like they're a bit overwhelmed and they don't know exactly how to lean in. And when they lean into some of the writings and things, it gets a little beyond their scope, their ability to be able to understand. So I think the tangible reality that we have to be sharing this conversation and creating experiences that move the heart towards wanting to know more and feeling like an individual can be involved and not kind of lost in the grand sauce of all of the challenges that we face.
Oh, you're muted, Karla.
Lots of places have like 1 day workshops, like let's make trash art or whatever. And what I'm really talking about is like professional working artists working with like, I don't know, Dr. Brody at A&M mapped the entire Gulf of Mexico communities to figure out which neighborhoods were most at risk of flooding and how many permits USACE had denied from Florida Keys to Brownsville. They denied 2 in like 20 years, right? He has a lot of knowledge about sea level rise. So what if I could have, $20,000 times 20 and have Dr. Brody paired with an artist who's really deeply in wants to know about this work but doesn't have the time to learn it all. And then they work together and say, okay, we're going to have this activation. Now, I'm just using that word because I don't know what they would create, and I don't want to know what they create. I want to see what they would create together that other people could come help them do or move through to learn about sea level rise. And that's the only topic, right? Not climate science. Or, I mean, y'all might have better examples, but I don't have a specific example, but I know it's not like Karla showing up after school with a volunteer to teach kids how to make trash into art. We can do that 500 times a day with no problem. What we can't do, maybe others are doing this, but I don't feel like artists and scientists who care about this planet are moving the needle with adults. And if we can get art and science about climate to be as cool as the iPhone and being with us to be as cool as the iPhone, we can reach a tipping point of activation of people who are decision makers that could change the world today, not 50 years from now, because we don't have time.
Umbrella has her hand up. Umbrella,
Yeah,
welcome.
yes. Well, first of all, Karla, fantastic work that you do, and I know we're owed a phone call, so we will do that shortly. So what you're saying is exactly, I think, what we've tried to do with Art Sale, and when we started our programming was exactly about bringing artists and scientists together based on a specific interest that the artist had. We would find sort of the counterpart in the science and in the art and the activist side, so that they together could deepen their understanding. And so, for example, we had an artist who was interested in coral, found a marine biologist at the University of Miami who could help them understand the stress of the coral along the Florida coast, and recorded sound. And then the artist created a sound installation called the Coral Sonata, which then we featured in a variety of settings, from exhibitions in a museum space to public square and sort of everything in between. And that was a way that we found was quite effective to get people engage with issues not from an intellectual point of view, but more from an emotional connection, because that's, as you well know, and we all here obviously know, what's so powerful about the art is that it really it's a gun, it's a punch to a gut. So it's not about understanding necessarily the science; it's about being able to translate that science so that it can touch people. What we've been doing since often artist residency are very expensive and not always available, we started then sort of translating these kind of connections, focusing on one event that we do every year, which is the World Ocean Celebration, which again focuses very much about using the power of art and storytelling to connect, and I would say mostly to a grown-up audience. One way that we found very powerful, we started last year, it's the Ocean Story Slam, and that's about finding people who can share stories about their own connection to the ocean or any kind of, body of water. And again, talking about grown-ups talking to grown-ups and sharing about this emotional connection and why it's so important. And then often bringing in the scientist, again, counterpart that can talk about plastic pollution or sea level rise. So to me, that is extremely powerful, as you said. What I find challenging, and it's something that we're really working on, it's about how to be able to measure the impact that these kind of programs have, with metrics that are then that we can then share with funders and with the different parties that have been involved, so that we can all understand how does a dance performance or an exhibition or an ocean story slam actually changes the action and the views of people who are participating in these events, from what they knew or how they felt before that action to after. And so what we're trying to do now through hopefully a grant from the Nye Foundation is to be able to hire someone who can help us with creating very specific surveys that we can share with people during the events that we're creating to measure exactly that, understanding where they were before and how participating in our programming has had an impact, and their understanding and their knowledge, and suggest actions that they can take, because as we all know, individual agency, it's important, and we need to empower people to understand they can actually affect change. So, I mean, I'm rambling. I don't know if that what I said makes any sense, but I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation, Karla, finally.
Yeah, of course. So one part of this, like what we want to do is when the artists and scientists come together, we want what they make to include others in the making, right? So that everybody somehow the product is co-created between the art and the scientist and some community of learners, which makes it even more complicated because you got to get them there. But how we get our surveys done from adults when they're in our programs is we have food, and they can't get their food until they take the survey on their phone.
That's a
Thank
great
you.
idea. That's a great idea. And I mean, I just wanted to jump in and say, I think one of the things that by you being present, by you growing this land over time, you're building not only biological community, but building community. And I think that's where you start to see more and more change coming, is just this gradual kind of ability for people to participate in the change. And that's like, if people feel like they can do something good and they can see the goodness happening, and you keep facilitating that they can do it and we can do it together, and you're feeding them and you're doing activities with their kids. I think that's one of the most effective strategies that we've found so far in the 10 years we've been in Louisiana. Is we just have people that in the beginning were anti-conservation that now are coming out to look at the trees that they planted 10 years ago. It's just like, I wouldn't say they are anti-conservation, but they certainly didn't use the term conservation in the same way that we do. But yeah, just building those opportunities, those social gatherings, I think are really effective. And Xavier, hi, you raised
Hey,
your hand.
hey, Karla, first of all, hey, Brandon, good to see
Yeah.
you and everyone else here. Karla, I just want to celebrate you and the work that you have done as a way of talking about social practice. And I know you're focused right now on, what kind of program or project you can build to try to capture the resolve of a community and channel it towards action. And I think in a state like mine, where policy, in a nation like ours, where policy um, evaporates as the EPA regulations are erased and scientists are let go. And at a time like now, when things are so problematic, building capacity is essential. And as much as I care about you trying to get your metrics to move the needle on public opinion around an issue, I think you're a role model on how to create a repository, a place for that capital to be sustained and captured through time. And that political capital is in the $2.5 million a year entity that you have built. And I don't want you to, for a second, not understand how relevant that is, because what you want to be able to do is to create a movement through time. And people move on, right? College kids who are studying something today move on. But if you have an entity that through time can be a place where knowledge gets developed, where there's a continuity and there's a community of care that is supported by that entity. And if the entity that you create has the kind of impact, I mean, visible, palpable, longitudinal impact in transforming a community, then people are going to want to come to you. And then you have power to translate that into policy, because the people who make policy want to get votes from the constituents that are your members. So to me, that's the game here, right? It's building that kind of institutional capacity. The way I have done it, because I don't have an artist vote, is I partner with systems. I literally partner with institutions. I infiltrate them as a way of engaging them, but also transforming them so that now I have the institution buying into it and working with me. But in a world like ours, where an institution falls apart with an election, it's really important to build the kind of capacity that you've built. So to me, I just want to tell you that, and I told you this in a couple of our convenings and meetings. I think I've celebrated this before publicly, when Brandon brought us together. I think the work you are doing is essentially what a social practice is about. I really do. So let's celebrate that. And at a time like now, let's try to figure out how to build that kind of capacity. You know what I mean? Like build institutional capacity that can, through time, bring other people and other artists and model how we do this. Another person who does that clearly is Brandon. That's what Brandon's life is about, and that's what he does with his practice. So that's my 2 cents for the conversation.
Well, thank you, Xavier. You're always very helpful for my self-esteem. I appreciate it. But building capacity, I don't know, everybody on the call, that's a serious matter right now for many arts organizations and environmental organizations who lost a lot of funding. And so like my provocation is definitely aspirational, because like right now we're like, okay, when the NAS grant runs out and NOAA doesn't have another call for their BWET program, and I mean, it's just onslaught after onslaught of decreased places to find funding for these types of programs. And that's why I really feel a political violence against environmental organizations right now. And I don't know exactly how to respond to that.
I'm sorry, let me give you my addendum really quickly. And I think the way you handled that crisis at the moment is, I think you need to politicize, create leadership capacity among the members that you have now, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really about having your community, not just your board and your volunteers and the folks that come to your great events and your bird watching tours and all that, but have a different cadre of people that really take ownership of policies and issues. Like, so, I mean, that's the way, I think, the way we do it. It's like literally creating that. When I meant capacity, I just meant that, creating a series, cadre of socially engaged individuals who are not going to be duped, who are empathetic, who are science literate, that. So I think what you do, the way you handle that is by giving people more of a sense of ownership in what happens within Artist Vote, but also across the community. And I mean that. It's almost like, like all these Rotary clubs where everybody has committees and subcommittees and people are doing stuff and there's that kind of stuff. I think you sort of need that kind of like civic engagement, like building civil society kind of stuff.
I do go to my Rotary meeting every week.
It's like, Kathy, you have your hand up.
Yes. Hi, Karla. My name is Kathy. I'm an artist that's based in both Texas and California. I live mostly in California, but I have family in Texas. And first of all, a beautiful presentation. I'm, really inspired by people who are doing the kind of work that you are doing. And I actually am aware, she was with us for our last meeting, but there's a artist in Houston who runs the Community Artists Collective. Her name is April Frazier. If you don't know her, I'm happy to make the connection. But I know that there are members of her collective that have ties to the Galveston region that, they're minority members of minority communities that, are directly affected by the things that you're working on. So they, one of their artists might be a candidate to pair with a scientist in the way that you were speaking about in your presentation. It's a kind of, well, it's like a more direct uh, connection to someone who is creative, but whose, family has longstanding ties to the region. April can trace April's family, they still have their original 250 acres that were granted to their family after emancipation. So she's connected to people whose ties go back very deeply. So there may be some opportunity for, an artist scientist connection there. And I'm happy to, make the introduction if you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Hi, Kathy. Hello, and I'm sorry I can't get on screen, but my name is Christy Ronhell, and I oversee the Witness series that is housed in the Community Artists Collective. I'm the lead
Oh,
artist for that
great.
work. April
Great, great,
Frazier
great.
is she functions as a photographer. I put a link in the chat. This year we're celebrating 5 years
Yes.
of the Witness series, and so one of the things I was going to say. About involving adults. There is some work that I am involved with the Prevention Institute and an organization called Shine. They're based out of California, but we're doing some work, some witness-centered work here in the fall and next spring, and it's centered around gender-based violence prevention. And so I was going to say that to the point that was made that bringing adults to spaces to learn about nature outright sometimes can be overwhelming with the science and other things, but the thing that I've learned in my curation of Witness over the last 5 years is that if you bring the adult people and you partner things like, for instance, for myself and under the umbrella of Witness, it is really couched under the conversation of self-care, rest, and cultural preservation, but it's within a nature space. So what's going to be happening, and this work is going to be funded by Roberts Woods Foundation with the gender-based violence. It is that same kind of conversation, but a little bit different because it's more upstream and it's also post-trauma, but bringing folks into green spaces and letting that nature setting be able to foster relationships that may prevent gender-based violence, but having it in that space. So you bring people in the top part of the conversation doesn't, it's nature centered, but it at the core, it is conservation and all those other scientific things. And so Witness is done in partnership with the Audubon and the City of Houston Health Department and, some other conservation groups, but it's also done in partnership with arts organizations. And I have an umbrella under the collective. So just when you were talking, I was thinking you can bring adults, but sometimes it's nature centered and the conservation is the core of a larger maybe more adult kind of conversation. So when you talk about gender-based violence, that is definitely something that adults would come to the conversation too. But then you have it in the green space and you anchor it with your conservation partners in the science part of the thing. So just wanted to add that. But
Yeah, thank you. I think you can
yeah,
also make a direct connection between the trauma to the land and the environment and the trauma, in the human space.
right. No, and that's the thing for communities of color, especially ones, because all witness series events happen in Black and brown spaces inside of the city. So it's like in places where folks are underutilizing existing green space, programming that green space and doing it in partnership with other BIPOC artists. But that through line, and even as you talk about April and her reclaiming of her family's lineage and the land that they have where her family is from, no one is actually on that land anymore, but it's the reclaiming to go back there and not be scared of unpacking what those histories are. Because for folks of color, it's kind of a catch-22 because you have you have great stories, but then you also have layered in there unexpected stories of trauma and loss, right? And
Exactly.
so I think that that's the reason why this conversation and the work of witness, and I've leaned into this thing about gender-based violence prevention, because as you talk about those traumas and the things that you see in those communities of color, unfortunately, because of relationships and tensions, oftentimes gender-based violence plays a part in some of those traumatic stories. And it's like you can't unpack, it's like a cake that's already baked, all the ingredients that went into it, but it's a cake. And so I just think my big so what is taking an issue, putting it in the green space and embedding nature in that learning, so people come away with the healing and the other parts that they need of that initial thing. But it's also that you bake it in, and then you bake in the important part of relational health. And I think that goes back to the person was asking about how do you measure it. The work through Sean and the Prevention Institute, their measurement in the conversation is about relational health.
Well, Christy, if you need a place to bring your group, we're here. We have done lots of program, supported many different organizations with whatever, like DeCamera has a program for disabled children. They come and kayak and do sound mapping. They each have support, though these are very disabled people. They can't paddle. But, on the other hand, we had a collective gathering with Bayou City Waterkeepers and 4 other groups, and we did habitat restoration. Their focus is building resiliency in community through nature-based solutions. So if you need a partner for a green space, we're here, and we love to share our preserve, and we even have an outdoor pizza oven and can cook pizza for about 30 people.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, I definitely know with this second tranche of work, I put the site there for the witness series up there. That also includes on that page, you'll be able to click and find April's work as a photographer in the work that she's done capturing witness series. But definitely.
I think she interviewed me. I think she did work for Bayou City Waterkeepers.
Oh no. So April did not. No, I don't know. She's been a part of the Community Artist Collective. I know that Witness but the Waterkeepers is also a partner of the Witness series. But I definitely, what I was going to say was that as I'm mapping out the fall and spring happenings, I will definitely keep that in mind. Thank you for that. And I do want to also thank you for your work and your efforts. But I just wanted to bring up that you could bring in adults, but sometimes you put another issue on top of the conservation conversation and you interweave it together. And I think some of the unpacking for adults, it takes time. So if you build relationship and they come back over and over, you can then start to unpack that conservation conversation. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. And, talking about adult unpacking, like before Splash was created, I think Michelle mentioned Splash, which I can't remember the acronym, but like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, the EPA had a trash-free water initiative where instead of picking up trash, you stop the trash before it gets in the waterway. So I'm still very motivated by that concept. And so we convened the first kind of conference on like how are we going to address trash plastic regionally. I think it was 10 years ago. And like I was shocked. 80 people signed up and came to talk about trash. What I wasn't prepared for is that 80 people had to tell their trash trauma. Before we could talk about any solutions, everybody had to share about their trash trauma. And so now when we have cleanups, I don't go because I don't want to hear the trash trauma. Like I've lived with it my whole life, right? Like I just want to stop the trash, but I frequently am telling our educators when we have adult events, you have to leave time for them to tell stories, just like in a school group. Like if I say I grew up with dolphins, 10 kids raise their hand to tell me their story about when they saw a dolphin. So I think in general, people very much want to unpack what they know, what they think they know, what they feel. And part of what I think is so powerful about art as a social practice, which I think Xavier would agree with me, that when we have people co-create with us, we're helping them unpack and we're activating a response that is proactive instead of reactive to, in my field of work, what I think of as environmental traumas, that we have to get people engaged and feeling positive about the environment.
I see that Jonathan Foray is on this call, and I wanted to drag him on for a second because he is, as far as bringing adults to the table and bringing them in a parade and getting them actively involved. I wonder, Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind just talking for a minute about some of the strategies that you use.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon. It's good to see all of you guys. Forgive me for my camera not being on because I'm joining you all via my cell phone, and I am not technologically advanced enough to understand how to operate Zoom on my phone other than unmuting myself. But one of the things that we've done is we've created a festival that is based in Cajun folklore. So it speaks to, a visceral part to a lot of our community members, stories that they grew up with and enjoyed hearing. And we were on the cusp of losing some of those stories, and so we've made it a part of our local pop culture, if that's even if I can even say that. And it's brought people together that I don't think that would have had a reason to come together outside of this. People from different backgrounds, lots of artists, but also lots of scientists, because the organization that I'm the executive director of is the South Louisiana Wetlands Discovery Center. And so it's environmental education focused. And so we've effectively combined folklore with science and actually maybe push the needle a little bit on the narrative of the Rougarou, who, when I was a kid, was a very scary creature that my grandparents said that I had to behave or else this werewolf kind of thing was going to get me. To today, where we've sort of made this character from folklore a hero of the swamps and a protector of the swamps, and don't destroy it because the Rougarou is going to get you. So it's been a really cool process, and it's been wonderful to see people come together and their creativity and their costuming skills. Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for asking me to talk about that.
I've
Thank
never heard of this creature. Can you spell it?
Sure. So the French is loup-garou. So it's Loupgarou. But we've kind of lost the French pronunciation of it, and so we have gone with rougarou, Rougarou. And so some people think that there's a potential that it's two different stories, and others believe that it's they're the same character. It's just, since we've lost our ability of our French tongues, rougarou is easier to say than loup-garou.
All right, I'm going to look up this character. I grew up with skunk apes, so this is different.
I just put a link to something, just the first website that came up. I'm not sure that it's valid. I just took John's spelling and Googled it just so that you have it. I don't want to interrupt this flow of conversation, but I do want to open up the conversation to new people who might like to introduce themselves, or friends who have new projects that they want to share. This hopefully we can do this at the same time that we keep this energy that Karla has created for us going as well. So just for we're down to the last 30 minutes or so. Just want to have a little bit more of an open, especially if you haven't been here or before, or you haven't been here in a while, and you just want to check in with our community. That's great.
Michelle, jump in.
Okay. So I guess this is my third meeting that I've attended, and I did the Houston Monarch story, which I started with University of Houston Coastal Center, and in conjunction with it, I have a website on their webpage, their outreach page, that has information about pollinators and monarchs and milkweed and all that. And I do the art part is I do sculptures and then go out in the community, and I've gotten grants to put them in Buffalo Biopark. They were Houston Arboretum, and now they're over in Wise Park. So it's really aimed at children, I think, and adults. I mean, they both go out into these native sections, and I've been fortunate enough to be there when these kids come out with their parents, and it's really reaffirming that these kids know stuff, and they know it because their parents have taught them. So there's a lot of interest, but I don't know how to. So it's very realistic. It's not abstract. I don't know where to take it from where it is right now. I don't know if Carlos, that's something you might be interested or have information.
Well, it sounds like something that the Spark Park might, they have a new director, Kathleen retired, but they're embedded in the city of Houston, but they have funding, but more importantly, the Spark Park wants art that is appropriate for adult and children, but for also school environment. And I mean, I can just tell you, elementary schools are obsessed with the life cycle of butterflies. It's our most frequent request. Can you teach about that or make something about that?
Right. And the Texas Master Naturalists, I work with them a lot. They come in and bring the plants, all the native milkweeds. And then I have been going back and watering and weeding and all that. So that's my involvement also. It's really been a learning experience. It's not probably as high science as you're talking about, but I reached out to the experts in the community about monarchs and restoration, habitats and all.
And I don't want to, like, I really don't want to, I mean, there's high arts, or we talk about, hard science, soft science, like, our work with K through 12 learners is, it's basic estuarine ecology, environmental education, We did get to partner this year with the University of Texas Medical Branch. They have a Moby coach. And so we partnered with aquatic science teachers and the students. They did make art, but they also learned how to sample air, soil, and water in their neighborhoods and ask questions about air quality and different circumstances where those parameters could affect environmental health. So like that was like hard science for us, like to do something with aquatic science kids, right? Normally we're with the seventh grade art school teacher or the seventh grade science teacher. So I do want to, I'm very, there's a wide spectrum of art and science. Like master naturalists are not degreed scientists typically, but they are volunteers and they're a resource and they're well trained in what they know, right? They're not Dr. Brody at A&M who can map the Gulf of Mexico and calculate the sea level rise and see if a permit affected their flooding or not, right? So I do want, I think like I'm hard on myself because we're doing eco art with kids and I have a BFA and I want to do my own eco art, which I say I never did. Now Xavier's probably going to chime in and tell me you're making art, Karla. So I'm hearing that. But, I think there are um, spectrums of art or like the blue carbon conceptual art. I mean, the teachers tell us this is the hardest thing that their kids are asked to do all year is to think conceptually about air and water and climate and things like that. Now, for the kids, they make hysterical images. Like, there's the Texas City petrochemical company is smoking a cigarette. I mean, that's hysterical. Like, they get it, right? They know what bad air quality is. Um, there's a wide spectrum of art and science that the more we have out there, the more accessible it is, the more science literate our society is, the better luck we're going to have at the national, federal level with how we treat scientists and how we treat human health issues and everything from vaccines to like coral science. You know, I personally don't think we can have enough art and science. I'll just leave it there.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any updates they'd like to share about projects or upcoming events or anything like that? Maida?
Yeah, I'd like to let everybody know that I used to be the state folklorist in Louisiana, so I was working in the state arts agency, and artist engagement projects were, a core part of what we try to encourage. And since I've left, I retired last year, and since I've left, I've continued working with the Bayou Culture Collaborative. And what I'm trying to do and continue to do is facilitate the conversation between among the environmentalists and the arts world, helping the arts world become more aware of strategies and the environmentalist about including the human dimension in planning and specifically culture. So I'm continuing that work. I work closely with Jonathan Foray, who you just heard from. But that's basically it. Was very privileged to do a workshop with a project that Brandon's involved with. And so I did a workshop for them. Part of the workshop is kind of an introduction to the basics for newbies. And then the second part of it is about cultural strategies that can be used in adaptation, which art strategies is a large part of that.
I think Maida too, one of the things that Maida has been working on is helping communities that are needing to migrate eventually, if not now or already, probably in the near future, and then also working to train communities that are on higher ground and away from the water on how to receive those communities. And that's like this whole adaptation between, especially in places like Louisiana, where individual villages have their own dialect of French or and cultural traditions, receiving new people can be a challenge for sure. And so trying to think about what that looks like and think of strategies for both sides adapting to what those changes are going to look like.
Exactly.
Let's see, anyone else? Henry, I'll put you on the spot. What have you been up to? We haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been so absent. The last time I was on was February of last year or something of that sort. Um, uh, the 25 was really about concentrating on more studio practice than the socially engaged aspect of my art making. And I had just finished an exhibition with Heather L. Johnson, my partner, who's also on this salon. That ended on February 8th. It began on January 9th. But after the spring, it was all about just building out a studio, making this new work, and putting on this exhibition. Just so you know, as most of you know, I was doing the BioArt Biotorium here in Houston, but finally I decided that I needed to address the elephant in my psychological room, which was my diagnosis of stage 4 colon cancer back in 2017. And so this was artwork that was finally addressing this part of my life. And within these exhibitions, these installations, I should say, I even included the cover of a CT scanner. So, and Heather, she will explain a little bit more about her work. We brought that together in the space at Throughline Gallery, and we had this sort of passive collaboration over a number of months. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link about the video tour and maybe a link about the exhibition at Throughline Gallery. And Heather can tell you a little bit about her part in her half of the exhibition. So I'm putting you on the spot now.
Well, one thing that I'll add to that's quite relevant, I think, to this conversation, a couple steps away from its heart, is that the show is very much about the consequences of pollution and of environmental degradation. Henry's cancer story being, a very central part of that. My exploration involved mechanical infrastructure and a sort of odd psychological love-hate relationship that humans tend to have with building massive, impressive things, of which I am one of those, being a former motorcyclist, long-distance motorcyclist. But we came away, from the experience of making the show together with the realization that we could work together as a couple, which is kind of a big deal. But also that, it's a conversation that doesn't happen, very often, because, the consequences of these, of our conundrum with our dependence on technology and the built environment is, it's just not something that people talk openly about. I mean, we're always looking for solutions to problems, but so often those solutions just sort of patch up and build upon the original structure without actually looking deeper at, the root causes, which are frankly cultural, that do involve, deep psychological, unresolved histories and traumas like racism, like inequities of various sorts. So I'm excited for that conversation to evolve. He and I are looking into possibly taking the show in an expanded way, in an expanded version of the show to larger venues, maybe, you know, small museums, regional museums that might have a little bit of a budget, so that we can really bring this conversation to a bigger, an adult audience. You know, I think that we tend not to want to talk about you know, the trauma that results from our actions, and it's an important thing to look at.
Please see the chat for links.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Anybody? Cami, Ben? Look, I'm just going through whatever's showing up first. Heather, Sandra. Anybody want to chime in and say hi and tell us what you're working on?
Xavier hasn't spoken to us in a while either, but on his work.
Yeah.
I'm in proposal writing right now, so I haven't really been doing a lot of work in the lab or anything. I've been chained to the desk. You know, it's the clouds are parting as we speak, and open me up to more active participation in the things that I love the most in the lab. So, that's kind of where I've been. I've been doing that for a couple months, and they're all environmental kind of proposals. So I guess they're kind of in line with what people are thinking. Most of it's about toxicology, though.
Yeah, but also with an environmental justice.
It is. It is. With an
Getting
environmental justice edge.
Yeah, getting
Not
to
overtly,
people.
because you can't. Sometimes you can't say it out loud.
Right.
Not in a grant proposal anyway.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, they're tools that can be applied to environmental justice, but we're applying it to something else for the grant, right?
So what are you calling it? How are you packaging it if you're not saying EJ?
We're packaging it as it is what it is. It's not like that we're packaging it as anything. We're just applying it as a non-animal model for assessing compounds and predicting the effects of those compounds on human health. So it's for, like, we submitted to FDA, for example, as a preclinical drug screen for new drug compounds, instead of using mice or actually dogs in this case, because the type of test we're doing is normally done with dogs at this stage of the research. But it is the model that we use for the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the killifish embryo that we've adapted with us. So that's how we're doing it. And this was all, you know, kind of forced. We were doing just environmental work, but in 2016, after the first election, like the day of, like, we decided we need to apply this more to human health, because to survive administration, so that the research could survive future administrations. So that's kind of what we've been doing for the past 12 years, literally, and that, or almost, feels like it. And now we're at that stage where we are actually applying to DoD and FDA, and, you know, forward funded programs that have nothing really to do with the EPA in that matter, but have everything to do with the heart of the research itself, you know, the fundamental aspects of it.
Thanks, Ben.
Karla, I've got another question for you. You listed like ocean memory coming. Are those active? Is that on your schedule? Is that what you're proposing to do? And
Oh, I'm dreaming of the ocean filibuster coming to Galveston as a kickoff for like a 2 year um, time period to have art and scientists collaborate and do things with the general public or community. You know, our region is the same size as Holland, so when I say community, I really do mean the greater Houston Galveston region is quite large, but we're all in it together. And then I did want to share that anybody in Houston that would like to be a part of our World Ocean Day on June 6th, you could come and have an exhibit or share your work, Michelle, or, you know, we have a lot going on. And Xavier is going to be our guest artist in resident for 2 days this year. And on the Friday before the festival, we'll host an event. We know the location now and can host about 60 adults, and they're going to have heavy hors d'oeuvres and cocktails because, you know, we want them to take their survey and make their yard signs and pay very good attention to Xavier. So I'm very excited. Vision Galveston is our sponsor for that event, but anybody in Houston would be welcome to participate. And we got the full list of all the HOAs on the island, Xavier, to invite every HOA to get the word out. So, you know, we're going to find those adult learners and force them to come to our event.
Awesome.
But I think I met Xavier and Brandon through the GumCom meeting, so I just wanted to share, you know, with the group and JD, like these things today you might say, well, I don't know, whatever, like, you know, but I think that there's lots of ways to partner and get even small ideas done um, in the midterm of the big idea.
Great. Thank you. Heather, it looks like you've got your hand raised.
Karla, I was just wondering, you know, through the earlier conversation about reaching adult audiences that that use the landscape, you know, that come to that either, I guess, most of the audience that you're reaching are year-round or people who live in Galveston. Is that right? I was just wondering.
No, we keep a lot of data because we get a hotel occupancy tax grant. So our public kayak adventures, our habitat restoration, we have open work days for stewardship. So I'm misled that we don't teach adults. We do teach a lot of adults. I just want to up the ante for the adults. I'm happy they come kayak and make a plein air watercolor. I mean, I've had people cry and say that I haven't made art since I was 5 years old. I haven't sat alone since I had my child 18 years ago and looked outside. I mean, that's transformative, right? For that person, that was a transformative experience. So, we do have a lot of adults in our public kayak adventure. 50% of all visitors to Galveston are from the greater Houston Galveston region. A lot of our volunteers that come like every other Saturday and help with our greenhouse and nursery, they're like part-time residents to Galveston, like they're here every other weekend, something like that. So we do have a lot of engagement from Houston in our, I would say, public facing programs. Our school programs, we're also serving the 5 county region too, but the adult learners that we have, it's really nature and are like place-based in nature. And um, what my bigger concern or idea is, like, we can't talk about climate change because people don't have language to do it. And when we do talk about it, we talk about it all at once with adults, right? Because they're adults, right? You should get it. Be literate in climate, look it up, right? But they don't even know, it's so abstract. So how do we break it down into digestible parts? Because the science of climate is probably the most complicated science other than cell. You know, they think all cures are going to be applied at the cellular level at some point, right? So that's really complicated science. I think climate science is like that. But it's the whole cell, right? It's the atmosphere, the planet, the water, the soil, everything. That's our cell. We all live inside that cell. It's probably all cellular biology, and I just don't even know it. Um,
I was just thinking about tourism and how impactful tourism itself is
Oh,
on
yeah.
landscapes, and how important it is to educate tourists, about the power that they have, in terms of the money that they spend, that we spend, because we're all tourists at some point, right? Most of us.
Well, I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, I mean, people all over the world want to visit an island or a coast, and when they leave, they forget that all their water, all their air, everything is headed back to the ocean and the coast, right? They don't associate themselves with stewarding the coast or the ocean. It's complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, tourism is very hard on the places people go for sure, Heather. And we do try to engage the tourist. I mean, we get a hotel occupancy tax to bring them here and put them in hotels.
It's good. I mean, that has to help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've got just a couple more minutes. While we're thinking of the last comments or any comments that you want to say, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge a couple of my colleagues that are online. As most of you know, I don't say this every time, but I probably should, that these events that, of course, Brandon has collaborated since the beginning on, originated with conversations between my office, cultural programs, and the Gulf Research Program at the National Academies. And my colleague of over 20 years, Alana Quinn, if you haven't met her, please email her and say hi or whatever. And just Alana, I'm not putting you on the spot to say anything, but just want to make sure that people remember what we do behind the scenes. And we have Megan Klinker is in the communications office with the Gulf Research Program. I think she's fairly new to this network. We keep pulling people in from the Gulf Research Program. We love it. But Megan, thank you. We have things cooking. Okay. Thanks for being here, Megan. All right. Well, let's call this a wrap for another wonderful day with the network. And I will stop recording, but you can feel free to linger a bit longer if you'd like.